Okay, and we're live. Welcome to the Meshery meeting for March 23rd, 2022. Ooh, if you don't have a link to the meeting minutes, Ashish Tiwari will post a link in the chat. Let me share them here. If you're on the call, welcome, and flip on your webcams if you have them and you at least have one article of clothing on. And it'll be nice to connect with you. Also, drop your name into the meeting minutes if you would. Meshery is a CNCF project. We follow the CNCF code of conduct. So use your swear words sparingly, or maybe aimed at yourself if you have to. Otherwise, be polite and kind to your neighbor. If you have topics today, please drop them in. The format goes a little bit like this, that you would put your name here as the individual that wants to talk about it, and then the thing that you want to talk about. And so we've got a number of them lined up, but if you have one, please drop it in. If we don't happen to get to it this week, that means that it'll be queued up for the next time that we meet. We meet a few different times a week for Meshery and its sibling projects. So there's a calendar out there. I think some of this information that I'm giving to you now is old news for the vast majority of you. There might be a lucky winner today who might be the recipient of our geez, I can't think of something. Anyway, Harshit, is this your first time on the call on this one? Because if it is, please say hi.
Hello, everyone. Yes, this is my first time in the meeting.
Nice. Oh, very good. Say a little bit about yourself, if you would. Just what brings you to the call?
Okay, actually, I just figured out some bugs in the Meshery, and I made a PR recently about it. So I just see that this is good to join a meeting and explore more about the Meshery.
Nice. Good. This is the place. This is you're in the right spot. Nice to have you. Is it is it Harshit or Harshit?
It's Harshit Andila.
Gotcha. Okay. Very good. I was afraid you were going to say that. It's just really difficult for me to. Speaking of swearing, it sort of sounds like I'm swearing at you, and so I just yeah.
No, it's absolutely okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Very good. Good. All right. By the way, my name is Lee, and I'm joined today by, well, a bunch of other familiar faces, a number of other maintainers and contributors. This is great. Speaking of contributors and maintainers, Abhi, you have our first topic of the day. So Rjsf custom components. So this is, as you prepare to speak to this is Meshery's UI has React JSON schema form. It uses a library to display components, and we've set it up in an extensible way. And so I suspect that's what you're going to talk about. And so I'll let you.
Yeah, just one.
So there's probably some background noise for Abhi, but so as he goes to speak to this, I'll fill in just a little bit of background for some of you that might not be overly aware of, well, of the concept of extensibility within Meshery. Meshery is a management plane. It's a piece of management software that manages Kubernetes clusters, service meshes, a variety of things. And in trying to cover all the bases, there's explicit consideration made to ensure that people can plug in new capabilities into Meshery. So it has a plugin model, an extensibility model that goes not only for its backend capabilities, but also Meshery's user interface. And so there is a set of a whole area about extensibility that you can peruse. And so Abi was just expanding one of the extension points. So Abi, if you're back.
Yeah. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so yeah, as we have talked about, so we use Rjsf components in one of our extensions called Meshery, and this is what it looks like. So this is not generated like in the UI, and actually we have a lot of like if I should have running. I'm running Kubernetes, so I would get like a lot of Rjsf components, and also this is we are using Rjsf forms for dynamically generating forms that is to be rendered on the canvas that user can fill in, in place of the YAMLs to get to the configuration they want. So because we are using this Rjsf forms inside our extensions, so we have to provide the support for the custom components inside extension, because the two forms may or may not look very similar, because it may be the need actually, right? So this form in the UI here may not look the same as we are using in the Meshery. For that reason, we are using custom components. And the PR is just fixing one of the bug with the previous custom component setup that we have done, which was not actually implementing the custom components. And that's what this PR is all about. So yeah, so that was it, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. Yep. Rjsf. No one has heard of that before. And I don't know that you should. It's just another of the 1 billion NPM packages available.
Sure.
But it becomes it or something like it is really helpful for Meshery as Meshery goes to manage like all kinds of systems. I mean, managing Kubernetes would be just enough. Actually, if you were to go look at it, managing Istio would be just enough. Istio is a bigger beast than Kubernetes. I don't know if you know that, but Istio is just as complex, if not more lines of code. And so to try to represent all of Istio's capabilities or all of Kubernetes capabilities is a lot to keep up with. And to do so the only way to really do so, certainly in an open source project, is to do it programmatically. And so this particular library assists with that. It's not the only one of its kind out there, but it allows all of you, Meshery itself, to describe, attributes of the infrastructure, and then to do so in JSON and have that JSON converted into React components. So from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And so, yeah, good. So if for those that spend time in Meshery UI, you'll either be using it or you'll be contributing to it. So, okay. Any questions for Abi? Yeah, well, this is the wrong screen. Where's my other screen? Oh, it's too early. It's too early. The daylight savings is, why couldn't we just fall back every time, not spring forward? Oh, okay. Thank you, Abi. There's the link that Pranav shared, a lot more information about extensibility. So there's a couple of different, not a couple, there's a few different styles of extension points. they function in a little bit of a different way. Ultimately, their end goal. Oh, actually, we're going to talk about another extension point. So maybe I won't talk about them, and I'll just let Pranav give you a different example of a different way in which you can extend Meshery. So.
Hello everyone. So basically, if like already you told about extensibility, right now we have two extensible points in our Meshery UI. One is the user preferences, and the other one is the navigator. So basically, these extension point gets plugged in dynamically when you're running Meshery, and it depends upon the provider which you use while signing in to the Meshery UI. So right now I would be talking about the user preferences, which is basically the preferences which you use for your particular Meshery deployment. So I will be sharing my screen and like explaining you that, and also what my that I also share what I did in my PR. So this is how your Meshery UI would look like when you will log in. After logging in and selecting Meshery as a remote provider, this is the preferences tab. And in there, this remote provider tab is one of the remote pluggable extension point, which plugs in when you run your Meshery deployment. So initially we just had one settings that was start mesh map on Zoom. So what I did, I expanded it and added two more settings, that is snap to grid and hide grid. Now what these settings basically are related to mesh map. So when you get access to mesh map, you'll understand that in the canvas we have, when we are deploying our designs, we might want a canvas to look like as we want. So if we go over here, here are those settings, and basically I replicated those settings into the preferences so that user can have two ways of turning on their switches. So this, and my PR was basically about refactoring that and making it like available at two different places. So for example, if I turn off this hide grid settings from this side, and then if I go to preferences, and then that thing is replicated here. So this was basically my PR about persisting user preferences and then refactoring it so that the code for the preferences are in one place only and not like being used redundantly in two places. So that was about my PR for user preferences. Any questions?
So basically the preferences can be managed from 2 points, right?
Yeah.
And the settings are synchronized. Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Nice. All right, fair enough. Our next topic up is on, well, a new adapter. I think we're at a current count of 10 adapters for Meshery. This next adapter would be the 11th, so Meshery adapter for Cilium. At the same time that this adapter is coming forth, it's time to retire another adapter. That one is the Octarine adapter, which most of you probably never heard of, but that service mesh was acquired by VMware, and they're changing around. They've got a whole Tanzu platform. And so anyway, point is there's a new service mesh coming forth, Cilium service mesh. And so naturally, Meshery should interact with it and help support it. And so is Utser on? And if he's not, then I'll send him a note, but Pranav, you might be able to fill in given your work on this as well.
Yeah, so Cilium adapter is basically a new adapter which we would be using in Meshery. So right now there is a lot of work on it so that it remains consistent with other adapters which we are already using. So there are many places of work, like if anyone is interested in contributing to a Cilium adapter, then feel free to check out the open issues and maybe try out the adapter, let us know that where it's failing so that we can improve it further. So recently I also made a PR, so I would be sharing my screen to show what I did. I think I made it this evening only. So what this PRR is basically about, first of all, it writes a workflow, which that workflow is about statistically updating our statistically updating our Meshery Cilium adapters repo with the custom resources which Cilium has on its own repository. So that is one of the change. Second change is about refactoring the code for dynamically and statistically generation of custom resources. Like this, I did this was required just because so the code for each adapter is remain consistent and it is easier to maintain. And the third was basically updating the latest resources of Cilium service mesh into our mesh repository. So I did the three changes, and I've asked for review. If someone can please review it. Let me know where I've gone wrong.
By the way, in the workflow, while generating components, are you using batch scripts or are you using meshkit function like the other adapters?
Yeah, I've actually used the same workflow
Okay, yeah.
which we are using in other places. I've just changed the name of the this, and I've also added the functionality where we can use this force dynamic.
Yeah.
I've added in the main.go file, so please check that out. It was over here, here is that thing. Please try it and let me know if it's working or not. And those still we need to work on the UI part so that these operations for Cilium adapter are visible on the meshery UI, which is not being done right now. There's some bug in that place. So if someone wants to look that out, please do it. I think it would be an issue for that as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Any
on that
questions?
topic. Yeah. To follow up what Pranav was saying on that topic, I'll demonstrate the issues with the UI and this adapter. So there's just a little bit left to finish off. It's not actually clear to me if it's the UI or the adapter that needs to be where code needs to be changed. But so to demonstrate this, I'm running Meshery, and it's got a couple of adapters connected. So one of them is the Cilium service mesh adapter that Pranav was just showing. So I've got it running locally, and it's connected. When it connects, it will register the components that Pranav was just showing. So that pull request means that the adapter will generate components for Meshery to manage Cilium. So if I go over to this adapter and navigate to it in the UI, what we would be expecting is for the UI to look like this. It would say, okay, well, if you want to manage a Cilium service mesh, here's the various operations that you can just invoke directly. And so when you navigate to Cilium, you should see a very similar thing. There are operations written into the adapter. And so Utzer is here now as well. And do you guys know where the final issue remains? Is this a UI configuration, or do we not have the initial set of operations written in the same way as the other adapters?
I tried debugging what's the issue. I was doing the same thing just right now. So I encountered that I think it is in the UI, because it is complaining about add-ons when we try to filter the add-ons in the UI. The add-ons field is empty. So the UI is complaining that it cannot iterate on the empty array kind of thing. So this error is coming. Till now, what I've understood. I will update more regarding it.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, another way of addressing it is if there are no add-ons for this mesh, then it should be responding in kind. So like there aren't any add-ons supported for a few other service meshes, and the UI handles that. So yeah, think about that as you go through.
Okay, then it must be the adapter.
Well, no, or I mean, it could, rather, it's usually the combination of the two, and usually you can address it on one side or the next or both. And it's generally good to address it on both, because in concept, the UI, if there's no add-on present, or if there was a bad response in the add-ons section, and by the way, I'll try to go to the add-on section for Istio to show you. I think I hurt that adapter. The UI should be resilient as well. Like even if there are changes to go into the adapter, the UI should still be resilient. So, yeah. But good. So that's a fresh adapter. I think after that portion is fixed, the adapter will be ready for beta state. So once that's fixed, it's time to promote to beta. There's a member or two of the isovalent team, the Cilium team, that is chomping at the bit to use the adapter. They're ready to start doing some performance testing. Okay. Other feedback or questions on the Cilium adapter? Nice. The next topic is from Sikranda and Husseina on helping meshery-ctl get a tighter integration with EKS.
Hello, everyone. How are you?
Good.
Hope you're all doing great. So the issue here is to migrate from using this. Let me share my screen. Okay, to migrate from using this command AWS EKS update kubectl and then use the Golang SDK. So unfortunately, the Golang SDK does not have that. It does not have a function like a one function to do it. So we had to find our way out, and we managed to stumble upon this solution. Let me uncomment it out so you can all see it. Yeah, this solution using the AWS Golang SDK. So this scribe cluster, it kind of gives us information about the cluster. The information it returns looks like, this is what the command returns, the AWS EKS update kubectl. This is the structure it returns, and it writes it to the kubectl file provided here. This one, utils.config path. But the snippet that I just showed you returns something like this, that looks like this. So it is not entirely identical to the CLI, but it's similar. So we have to take out some things like the ARN. We are still not sure about which exact data, but the data we shall need for sure is this one, which is like the name, and then this certificate authority data, and the endpoint, which is like the server endpoint. And we shall have to model that and change it into a client, CMD client config, this struct. Open the page here. Yeah, this one. We can populate this struct using the output of the code snippet. or we can use this one, the REST API.config. So we are still kind of debating on which one to use. We haven't yet made any decisions here. And then that is what we shall put here, because the original implementation, after making this CLI call, it writes it adds the configuration to the utils.config path, and then it calls this set token function here. So set token basically just gets the context, and it sets the context. So it inputs this and the chosen context, whatever. If the contexts are many, it will prompt the user to choose one. So if it's one, it will use that one by default. So it sets the context. Let's go to this function and see what it's doing. Setting the context, it basically makes an API call to this endpoint, and it puts in the context name, the utils.param name. So this upload file with params basically just builds the request in a multi-part form, but it reads from the config file that was written to by the AWS CLI. So it reads here from that config file and sends it to this API endpoint. Let me see if I can find it. So at that endpoint, what happens is as long as being stable. Okay, the endpoint basically just
So actually, basically the config command has to do what it has to do is it has to get the token from the EKS cluster, and it has to get the certificate data as well. And using that config, we have to do the set context. So if we can get this config from EKS cluster in rest.config format, and there is a way to actually write it into a file. So let me share this link. I'm actually trying to do this part of the coding now, because from the code snippet what he has shared now, right? So we can return the token as well as the CA data in a rest.config format as well. If you can stop sharing for a second, Hamza, I can share this a small snippet. So from the region as well as the cluster name, we can get the from the cluster we can get the REST config. So we can get the tokens as well as this is exactly the Stack Overflow code snippet. So we can build this REST config and give it. So here we can specify what all things are important, and we can return that. And then by using this suggestion, how do we create the kube config file from the REST config? I believe we can write this config into a file format so that the rest of the set token and set context calls would work as is. And another thing we have to think about is this would write only the CKS config into a separate file, but we would also have utils.config file. How to merge that is also one more thing we have to look into in that case.
Yeah, Hussein, refresh my memory if you would. When we, and this is like, it's specific to, this question is specific to EKS and what we're doing, but it's also a general question for what we're doing when we like manipulate kube config for Minikube or for any Kubernetes cluster that doesn't, I'm sorry, for any user whose kube config doesn't contain the certificate data. Refresh my memory, are we, as we go to extract that information, are we rewriting the user's kube config, or are we keeping that information elsewhere?
No, we do flatten it out and write it into we overwrite it actually.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Yeah, utils.kube config. Yeah, again we write it back to utils.config path. Okay, we use this. But I do remember having the flattened out thing in the config path. So
Good, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm making a note that we need a warning / informational note in our docs that lets people know that behavior goes on, just so that they're aware. Like, there are other programs like Docker, and probably I'm rehashing something in the past, but I had wondered about this last week. So we are rewriting the file. All right. There are other programs like Docker Desktop that will rewrite your kube config as well. And good, so that sets precedence to doing the same thing. It's a little bit scary because it's kind of like, it's sort of like messing with people's Kubernetes configurations. That said, like for Docker, maybe you're running Kubernetes in Docker. So of course, as a Kubernetes manager, Docker Desktop should have, authority to do that. Although if you have many contexts inside of your kube config, Docker Desktop might be, it's co-managing that file along with other systems. And so I think I'm just kind of talking out loud that makes me feel better with Meshery as a management plane, as a Kubernetes manager, as a service mesh manager, that it too would rewrite portions of the file. Like, okay. But yeah, having a note, it's actually a request for volunteer to add a note to the Meshery docs. I'll go make an issue. So thanks for that, Hosanna. Oh, and then, so just some commentary on what Husseina and Sekrenda were showing is, that's great. I mean, like, I think you're going to get it. Like, some of it is deciphering the data that you get back from AWS, the snippet that you were sharing. Some of the Husseina and some others that had worked on this system config area had already given prior thought to the user experience that should occur as they're being asked a few different questions about their EKS connection. And so it's nice because there's an existing foundation to, this effort is just a bit of refactoring to really make it a lot smoother, a lot, to eliminate a dependency. This is, Hussein has been on this, been carrying this torch for a while, which is to, every time that a dependency is eliminated, the probability that a user will be successful is greatly increased. So, and just the UX around it is much nicer. So, feedback, anything else that we missed, Sekrenda or Husseina? Like, no, not necessarily any. Yeah.
The last time we discussed it, you had suggested a solution of not writing to the config file and passing it to the Meshery server, right?
Probably because that's a safer thing, safer in terms. But
Yes,
that said,
but the moving parts, we shall have to rewrite the set token function and all those other functions. We shall have to restructure them if we are going to go down that road. Or we can just warn the user that we are about to stomp your entire config file. Then if they say yes, we proceed as usual, and we just need to edit that snippet to write to the config file. Yeah, I think
Yes,
that's all from
actually, yeah. Hamza has brought up one of the REST API calls that we can use, like set. There are some handlers where we can directly set this context using those REST APIs. So if you don't want to go to the exact kube config file path, we can remove this set context, set token part, and directly maybe call those REST APIs with whatever config we get from the EKS cluster. So that is another part. So basically, I think with multi-cluster thing, that might be a better idea going forward. But as a first attempt, I think maybe we can go with this approach of writing the REST config into a config file to make it work first. So then maybe we can refactor by using the REST API.
yeah, I think I'm gonna point to what Hussein said, which is that we probably are doing really well to incorporate what you guys are doing and improving upon the existing experience while leaving aside the considerate, like that question that I was asking or what I had suggested earlier. The problem with what I had suggested, the good thing about what I'm suggesting, or had the question I just asked was that, hey, look, like we don't step on anyone's file and they don't get upset that like, oh, this system rewrote my kube config and I wasn't expecting that necessarily. Like, it's not totally unexpected. If you're answering a bunch of questions about how to connect to your EKS cluster, it's not totally unexpected that maybe there's an addition or a mutation of your kube config. The real problem with not rewriting the kube config is that then every time that someone wants to run a meshery-ctl command that needs to interface with Kubernetes with EKS, well, then you're going to have to ask them all the same questions again, because you need to reestablish you need to get that info again, unless you take that info the first time you got it and persist it somewhere separately. And then on the fly, you merge those, their kube config with the certificate data that you got. And it's like that's just, I want to retract anything that I've said there. I think it's a good reminder to me of our behavior. But for my part, it would be nice if we're just leaving the behavior as is. Not necessarily, we don't need to apologize that your kube config gets rewritten. It's a good point of information. I don't even know if we necessarily have to ask them to have them confirm. It might just be something to tell them, like tell them kube config updated, and that informational note that's good to note. We could also say kube config updated, previous config archived at config.tmp or something. So if they wanted to revert to, they didn't like that, like that they could go back and get it. But so yeah, food for thought. Anyway, +1 to what Hussein has said, I think. It's good. Anything else? By the way, Hamza, do you go, I feel so much more confident saying Hamza and enunciating it correctly than I do your first name, and I feel so bad every time I say it. So. Is Hamza
You
okay?
actually pronounce, yeah, it's okay. But you do pronounce both of them well. You don't butcher any.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Okay. All right. Between you and who was the other one today? Oh, I don't know. Anyway, good. That makes me feel good. Oh boy, we're about 20 minutes. Okay, so Aditya, you want to talk about some of the activities, some of the quality improvements?
Yeah, let me share my screen. Just a sec. And it's controls. Yeah. So for a brief, my task was to increase the coverage of the unit test on CodeCov for Meshery. Earlier, it was like the unit test worked on the meshery-ctl and some of the internal folders alone, but not for all, like this one. Like it worked by the paths being inserted, but only these folders, like the internal and meshery-ctl, are what you can say the results are being available and not available for these folders. So my task was to increase the make the code cow know that these folders all also need to be included. And what I did is I also had to write some of the unit tests for those folders, and the result is here. So all of the internal folders are being included now, and it's now live. So my future work saw to increase the coverage of this test and to write more unit tests for these folders, because some of the tests are written for dummy, because only then the code curve will know that this folder is there just by writing one unit test alone, and it will be done in the future. And yeah, I also need to say this. If there are any volunteers who want to write unit tests for Meshery project, you are welcome to do so. So yeah, this topic is just short though.
Nice. What's the current goal for unit test coverage?
Currently, it's present. Since the new folders are included, there is no coverage, as you can see here, all on 0%. So the current goal is to increase to at least 2% and a maximum of 5% for now for all these folders.
Nice. Good deal. Okay, sounds like if there's folks wanting to jump in, Aditya and Piyush have both been really active in this area. They've taken us from 0 to where we are today. So jump on in. All right. Well, Aditya or Subedi, is this a future topic, or do you guys have a potential update today?
Well, there are some works need to be discussed regarding this, like the design. So this will be set as a future topic for now.
Alrighty. All right. Next one up. I don't know if either Hirsch or Shin is on. And if not, then I'll just speak to this real quick. Thank you, Piyush. And that is that there's, as we move forth toward Meshery v0.70, so we're on the very tail end of .60 and getting it out. But as we look toward capabilities of the forthcoming, the next release, the next version, we're going to take and split Nighthawk out of Meshery proper, out of the Meshery server container image into its own image, and making it basically its own adapter. And so there's groundwork that's been laid to do so. I'll say, so similar to Aditya's call for volunteers, this is a great place for volunteers to jump in on the ground floor of an adapter. So meshery adapters and the meshery-perf adapter, they describe their operations, they describe their capabilities, register those with meshery server. And in this case, this is about performance tests and performance profiles. And so the point of splitting out Nighthawk and moving to a slightly more distributed architecture, one of the primary points, is, well, to facilitate, horizontal performance testing, horizontally distributed performance testing, or to create a barrage of load generators that can generate load against different endpoints all at the same time, and then sync all of those results back to meshery server. So that's what that's about. There's an open repo. It's quite young. I think Ashish is going to make sure that we have a functional build, because Ashish, I think as of PR 6 and 5, I don't think that the adapter is building successfully just yet. Do you know, and if not, something for you to check on?
Yeah, actually, I didn't see any open PR when I saw your message in Slack. Can you also link the PR to which I'm supposed to check out and see, or were you talking about that main branch? Things are not getting built on the main branch.
Yep, I think when you opened up PR 6, your PR number 6, it said that it fixed PR 5,
Yeah,
which
issue 5.
Or issue 5. There's a okay. I think it's actually a PR. Like go check out my last PR. Go check out the repo if you would, and see if you can build it. That's really the question.
Okay.
Oh, nice, thank you. Anybody want to volunteer here? Anybody any questions on this? Just message if so. We've got about 10 minutes left. And so Rudarash, Meshery event streamer for Meshery CTL.
Yeah, hey. So so the wait, can I share my screen? Yeah, so the PR itself is about having a watch flag for the mesh remove command, and it's pretty much the same PR as Aditya had made, but I'm addressing an issue which he had also faced back here, and there was a discussion that all the commands that use event streamers are getting stuck at verifying operation. So what I figured out the problem is that the adapters, so just to give a little context, the way this works is an adapter sends out the meshery server sends out a request to the adapter to, let's say, install a service mesh or remove the service mesh, and then the adapter then sends back like a server side event for the server to broadcast to the clients who are waiting for events. So the problem here is that, so for example, right now here I've just have these two requests for events, but if I do any operations here, let's say I think I have, yes, I just moved it. So let's say I just install Istio, and yeah, I think this is so the point is that so we can see that the UI got the callback, but none the other two didn't. So the problem here is that the problem is that the clients are directly listening to, or the meshery server code that handles this is directly listening to the events from the adapter for each client. The problem with that is that this is resulting in us calling the receive function from gRPC in multiple different Go routines. So the code for it is here. So this is the code which is being run for every single client that wants to listen for events. and that like eventually goes and calls, I think here, receive message. Yeah, so this function, the client stream.receive message function, and the documentation actually also says that it's not safe to call receive message for the same stream in different Go routines. So that is what's resulting in only one of the clients getting the event. So that is why a lot of the commands from meshery-ctl or otherwise, which are listening for server-side events, just don't receive the events. So what solution I was proposing is we have some sort of code, some common, let's say a Go routine, which just listens to events from the adapters and just pushes those events to each client, let's say through a channel to each client, instead of the clients themselves directly listening to the adapters. Yeah, so that was the thought. So I would like to know opinions.
Raj, you explained it very well. That was great. You are sadly not the first to hit this issue within Meshery's code base. And like, yeah, I don't know. One of the other approaches that was taken was to create a broadcast, to create a broadcast system. Sounds like we're in the radio broadcasting system, but that, yep. So that way a message could be sent out and consumed by any number of clients, if you will, or any number of, yeah. Here's the thing is, so like, as your train of thought progresses, please consider the notion that Meshery UI is a client, meshery-ctl is a client, that messages might be either often they're originating from the adapters because they're often the ones that are performing operations. Meshery server also performs operations, so it might be the originator of messages. It made me slightly uncomfortable in the past to consider that we were implementing a broadcast system in Golang and that we weren't looking to an existing library that does that already, because we're not the only distributed system that runs into this kind of a challenge. Like, and so, and then thinking on that, and then I'm just speaking for myself. It also then made me more uncomfortable that not only were we not reusing a library that someone else had written in Golang for doing such things, whether it was broadcasting or taking the approach that you were saying about pushing rather than listening, is that basically what we end up creating is an enterprise message bus or a message bus. Like, and there are lots of those, and we're already using one within the Meshery project, and it's called NATS. And so, like, this distributed systems concern about messages, who's listening to the messages, who gets sent them, how many times they can get sent and received, whether or not they're acknowledged, and like all of that, like it starts to, one thread turns into many, and it starts to get hairy quickly. And so all of what I just said doesn't really help you necessarily. I said, okay, go think about it from these perspectives. Fine. Hey, go look up an old PR with the term, go search for broadcasts and you'll find some examples. And then even then you'll come back and then go study NATS. Those are kind of the three things that I said. And it's like, okay, 3 weeks later, you come back with like having thought through all that and learned that stuff. And the thing is like, if NATS isn't too heavy of a lift, it's the one to go use, or like it's the tech to lead into, and for us to really consider like its potential use, or one of its projects' potential use, like NAT streaming or jet stream. Just, like maybe it's not the full broker. Do other people have thoughts on this, suggestions on this? Because it's an issue. I mean, we're using NATs primarily in between MeshSync and Meshery server. And it works really well. But the use cases that Raj is talking about here, it might be that we would need a second NATs broker, and like. So Raj's the issue that you're talking about is ultimately quite important, because what's going on is that a user will say, either through meshery-ctl or meshery UI, they'll say, I would like this operation to be performed. I would like to provision a service mesh or something like that. And that might take a while, and it might take many steps. So for a user to sit there twiddling their thumbs, hoping that something didn't crash, just sort of waiting to see if something worked, it's a lot to ask of them. They've got to have a lot of faith in Meshery to sit there waiting. Rather, what you want to see back is just incremental progress. Yeah, so another approach that I would also wince at, and it would not be suggested, is to instead have the client that invoked the operation poll for status. What the user needs is not only a wait indicator, like a spinner sitting there saying wait, because eventually the spinner isn't enough. Eventually, most of us have looked at spinners for like hours, when actually the operation behind the spinner died like 30 seconds into the thing. And they don't know that because it's just spinning forever. So that's not even enough. Like, they need some sort of actual progress indicator, whether it's the actual messages coming back or just. And so if you would, as you think on this and as you help advance this narrative or this set of thoughts, there's a design spec called the Messaging Framework and Notification Center. That design spec is where to land these thoughts, I think, anyway.
Okay, I'll look into that. Also look into NATs.
Anybody else have comments on that? Yeah, it's one of those things that we eventually need to stop talking about it and actually go through the design spec, kind of get it done. That is teed up for Meshery 070, a focus on that. So, and Abhi and Pranav have given some thought to it recently, and so Abhi has linked to it in the chat. That's great. Okay, so we're like right at, yeah, Raj, we're right at time. I'm sensitive to the fact that we always have so much to talk about. We always run over, and what we should do is, Arshit, do you mind if we postpone your discussion until the next call?
It's okay, sir. It's okay.
Okay. And to help, like, without having to wait a week or wait until the next meeting, if you're able, you could take just a quick video summary and sort of send a link to that in Slack or on one of the mailing lists, and that way people can review asynchronously as well.
Actually, I have 6 mini bugs, actually UI bugs. So I was thinking to discuss 2 or 3 bugs here. If you have a time, I think we can do this. Or I will make a video on, and I will post in Meshery UI.
Nice. There's a website's call on Monday. That's actually a great call to bring these up on as well. It's a UI focused call.
It's actually UI focused on setting up a project issues on a Docker's docs. We have a make Docker docs. So I was thinking it's a critical issue to talk about while setting up.
Yeah, here's the thing: is like I'm still unconvinced. Like I I think it's your environment, or like, I don't, is anyone else having problems building Meshery UI or building the docs? Like, it might have been that when you built them, some additional packages, were those additional packages added real time or added into package.json?
Yes, I actually just set it out the make the setup UI for a Meshery that's written in the documentation. And it's having a problem with the Webpack versions. And in the docs, it's actually having a, I can show you if I get to into 2 minutes. I already set up an issue. Can I see on the screen? What is it?
Okay. Yeah. Please do it very quickly. Because if it turns out that was just that you needed to run make setup UI libs.
No, it's already set down. Sorry. So it's my screen. Yes. In a make Docker docs, if I just press enter here, it's telling that it's a very small error. It's repository name must be in a lowercase. Actually, it's a very small issue. I already solved this issue.
Nice.
But the make UI issue, I will wait a second. It's just while setting up the wait a second. I think it's okay, I will post a video about it. I think it will going to take some time.
Okay. Yeah. And we're Aditya Subedi or Aditya Alpha, or there's a couple of folks too that focus on doc. Is this a docs thing or is it a Meshery UI thing? Oh, I think our sheet accidentally, when he stopped sharing, he accidentally ended his call or his.
No, I'm actually.
Oh, you are. Oh, okay.
Yes, it's a problem with the docs. So Docker docs and make UI build also was not running. It was actually the Webpack version was not compatible. I made a PR regarding this.
When the Webpack wasn't compatible and you said make build UI wasn't quite working, had you previously run make setup UI libs?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And when you ran make setup UI libs, it did not fix your issue?
No, it didn't fix the issue. It was building a half of the files. It was not building its out folder there. And so I tried to change the version of a Webpack and it accidentally start working.
Okay.
And while setting up Docker docs, I actually use this Docker docs. First, I have an issue of a lowercase, and after that, I think it's a operating system issue from there. So Windows operating system issue, I think, for Docker docs, you can say that. But while setting also RVM, I tried to set up the RVM, and this command actually in the RVM, it was actually not working. So Docker, I was unable to set up the docs of the Meshery in a Windows platform. Maybe it's a platform issue.
Yeah, people do have trouble on Windows with Jekyll and Ruby. If you have WSL2, that's probably your best bet.
Yes, I have a WSL, but it's still creating a problem. So, I can show in a video because discussing here it quite take a time.
Okay.
So I think we are out of time. So I will share a video about this and post it in our Meshery UI Slack channel.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, and there's also issues in the Meshery site. It's a small UI issue we have. Is that it just we can see that if you hover over a little, it's coming and it's not removing.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
Yeah, it's a small issue. I can solve it in a. I think the next call I will be able because I will come up with a solution and made a PR. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great. It's and there's an open issue on that, right? I think.
Yep.
Gotcha. Perfect.
Okay, I will come up with the solution. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks a bunch, Harshi. That's great.
Yes.
All right. We're at time. We're over time. Thanks, everybody. Catch you on the next meeting. I think we have a build and release meeting this week. We'll have to go check. We'll have to prove me right or wrong. Okay. Thanks all. See you soon. Talk to you later.
Yeah.